Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Your attention, please. Welcome to Jimmy at the Crossroads, episode 67. On today's edition of the show, we're going to be focusing in on the best of Jimmy Sengenberger at the Crossroads, with special guests Mark Cuban, Dinesh D'Souza, Dave Rubin, and Rick French. Stay tuned. It's the best of Jimmy at the Crossroads.
And that, my friends, is how America was made great once again. Breaking at this hour, Jimmy Sengenberger is currently at the crossroads of politics and economics. Radio broadcaster master, now the celeb on the web. He's the smarty of the party. He's in cahoots with the grassroots. Jimmy at the Crossroads brings you thought-provoking commentary, hard-hitting interviews, original satire, and the best bumper music known to man. Jimmy at the Crossroads!
Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix, I said. Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix. I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of nonsense. People want answers, they want to understand. They come to the crossroads and Jimmy gives them the plan. I said, gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix. I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of nonsense. Come on, Jimmy, what you got?
Hello, my friends. Happy Monday and welcome to another edition of Jimmy at the Crossroads. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger, your host for the program, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner. Such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you here today once again here on the show that brings engaging, intelligent talk, Sang style. Such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you. Hope you had a good weekend and that things are feeling a little bit more normal. So before we get started with today's special program, I want to remind you of a few things to please go ahead and do if you have not done so already. First, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimmy at the Crossroads, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads. That way you won't miss a single video when it goes live or when we premiere the standalone interview videos. Every interview we do, we post them up as a standalone video so you can watch it separately, get right to it, and share it, and all those good things. Please do, by the way, share any and all videos that you check out here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter. You see it right here at Sang Center. That's Sang with an E, not an A, Center on Twitter. And also my Facebook. Facebook.com/Jimmy Sengenberger Pro takes you to the Jimmy Sengenberger Media Personality page where you can also catch all the live videos and a ton of other content right there. Plus, JimmyAtTheCrossroads.com is the website for yours truly and the show. So be sure to log on to JimmyAtTheCrossroads.com to get all the different content put up there. You can see articles that I have written and published, in addition to all of the videos getting posted up there, and more. Plus, just last week, let's put it up on the screen, we launched the Crossroads Club, Jimmy's Crossroads Club. I would love to have you along for the ride right here at the Crossroads. If you go to members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com, that's members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com, or if you just go to jimmyatthecrossroads.com and you click Crossroads Club in the menu at the top, you'll be able to subscribe with great opportunities as a member at various levels. And one of the gifts, one of the perks, one of the thank yous that we give you, you can't really see it on the screen here because you'd have to zoom in, but this is an engraved, special edition, limited edition, Jimmy at the Crossroads harmonica. Once you get to that activist level at $50 as a member, you have the option to secure yourself an engraved Jimmy at the Crossroads harmonica with your name on it. Be sure to check that out and all the other exciting opportunities. But this is a legit working harmonica. All yours as a thank you, depending on which level you go ahead and join as a member of the Crossroads Club. Members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com. See all the other exciting stuff that you can get as a member right there. Plus, shop.jimmyatthecrossroads.com is a place to go to purchase all sorts of special items. By the way, please do follow our friends at the Washington Examiner as well on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and at washingtonexaminer.com for great stories, reports, commentary articles, and more. So what are we going to do today? Well, today got a lot going on. We're going to share with you some of the best of Jimmy at the Crossroads. This is the 67th episode. We've already done nearly 70 episodes of Jimmy at the Crossroads, so I thought we'd highlight some particular interviews of note. So today, you're going to see special highlights from my interview with none other than Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, co-host of Shark Tank, and of course, billionaire investor extraordinaire. Also, we'll share my interview, an excerpt from that, a great highlight from my conversation with Dinesh D'Souza, noted author and documentarian, who had just come out with his new book, United States of Socialism. Plus, Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report, joined me for what he called his favorite, by far his favorite interview that he had done by that point on his book tour for Don't Burn This Book. You want to check that out. That was a lot of fun. Why in the world did Dave Rubin say it was the best interview, or his most favorite interview by far that he'd done? You'll have to find out. And Rick French, he's a businessman. We've had him on twice now on the program, but most recently he joined us after his business was devastated in downtown Raleigh. You have to see his story that we had live from his business that had been absolutely devastated by the riots in Raleigh, North Carolina. Mark Cuban, Dinesh D'Souza, Dave Rubin, and Rick French, all special guest excerpts from Jimmy at the Crossroads. The best of highlights today. Let's take a look at what we've done here so far on Jimmy at the Crossroads. It is such a pleasure and a privilege to introduce apparently my fellow Shark Maverick, Mark Cuban, who is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks NBA team. He is also, of course, co-host of Shark Tank and billionaire investor, entrepreneur extraordinaire. And I'm so excited to welcome him to Jimmy at the Crossroads, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner. Mark, sir, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you.
What's up, Jimmy? How you doing, buddy?
One of the concerns that I have, and we've tried jobs programs in the past, for example, the Great Depression. I mean, we saw the Works Progress Administration, the CCC, the TVA, numerous different programs, alphabet soup agencies FDR had in place to address it under the New Deal. And I always look at it this way in terms of the economy. Yes, consumer spending is important, but the most important thing that comes about in order to make an economy function is investment. A big concern for me, let's say that in order to pay for this, we have to tax Mark Cuban significantly more and others like yourself who are investors in companies. In order for a company to actually create jobs that can then bring about spending and demand, that company needs investment up front. They get the money from a Mark Cuban, for example, so then they can get more equipment or get new equipment to be able to hire employees to expand their business so they can provide more products and services. Only after production and investment, it seems to me, can you actually get the kind of consumer demand and consumer spending that you're talking about. And if we have to sap you and other investors who are very much out there, as you have done in Shark Tank and then in your private companies and so forth, what you're doing in that regard, I think, is tremendously more valuable in terms of helping to bring us back from the brink.
So one, they're not mutually exclusive, right? I'm going to continue to invest in Shark Tank companies and other companies, and there's no shortage of private equity. The question is, how long will it take? Now, if you can tell me a company that can create 4 million jobs, or an investment that's out there that can create 4 million or 6 million or 33 million jobs over the next 12 months, I'm all ears. But I already know it doesn't exist. I already know it can't happen. You have the Federal Reserve investing trillions of dollars of liquidity into the system. So there's plenty of capital available to, from my own resources and for me to borrow. There's plenty of capital for every major investor and corporation in the world to borrow from. But that's not the hard part. The liquidity is there. The hard part is creating the jobs fast enough that we don't go into a depression. And so if you're able to find a way to do that in a compressed period of time, amen, Jimmy, let's go.
Well, let me ask you a question.
That doesn't exist.
About the compressed period of time, Mark Cuban. I mean, the idea of the federal government hiring 4 million people, you have to bring in all the job applications, then you have to go ahead and train them. You have to go through rigorous processes in order to make all those ducks get in a row. And by the way, I don't trust that the bureaucracies of the federal government are particularly effective at that sort of thing. How do you think that you can get this done quickly enough to A, have an impact, and B, make it so that, I mean, the private sector innovation, what if during that interim time we have successful at-home tests that are produced well, produced effectively, produced easily for people to do, and you don't need to be hiring 4 million people because the private sector.
We can play what if until we're blue in the face, right? There's a lot of what ifs. So, if tomorrow they come up with a solution, then none of this matters, and you can stop the program. And I get the whole idea that once government gets started hiring people, it's almost impossible to take them off the payroll. And yes, that's the problem. I mean, I don't like that any more than anybody else. But you have to ask, where are we and what are we going to do to get forward? So will it take more time? Will it take some time for the government to hire that many people? Yes. Can they work within AmeriCorps and other organizations that already are used to hiring a lot of people? Yes. Will it possibly take longer than we ever anticipate? Definitely yes. But if you stack that up against doing it all privately, I just don't see a path where we can create tens of millions of jobs over the next 12 months. And even with all the waste, even with all the inefficiencies that are assigned to government hiring and government programs, they still will create the jobs that will amplify the demand, which will then increase the ability for companies to succeed. And that's what we need. Even when you have waste to show. Look, any company that starts, no company is 100% efficient. So a typical capitalistic company that's doing well might have 10% inefficiencies. The government might have 30 or 40% inefficiencies. But even after those problems with government, there's no other realistic business environment or private environment that can create the number of jobs that we need. And that's the bottom line.
I think the difference, and I appreciate it. I mean, you're very much articulate in presenting the perspective. I just don't have that kind of trust and faith in the federal government to do those sorts of programs.
We gotta let dogma go, Jimmy.
But it's not just about dogma. It's about practicality. And we've seen countries
Jimmy,
across the globe. Yeah,
so Jimmy, you're an entrepreneur.
I'll give you the alternative.
Sure. You've got to create 30 million jobs over 3 years.
Yeah.
Tell me what companies can do that.
So first
tell me
of all,
what 20 or 50 or 100 companies can do that.
I can't tell you a specific companies that can do that because I don't know. In fact,
or investors.
But what I
the
don't,
greatest investors of all time.
Well, but I don't presume to think that I know who's going to be the best investor, the best company to do that. Just as I don't think the government is that I can presume that the government's going to be effective to do it. I think if you start reopening, which isn't going to be an instant process, because you do have, of course, you have a situation with reopening where not everybody's going to go to restaurants, not everybody's going to go to movie theaters and so forth. But if you begin that process and allow people to start their businesses back up and continue to provide some of the assistance that we've been doing, I think that could be much more effective, especially with a deregulatory regime, than having the government do what hasn't worked in the past, in my view.
I wish you were right, Jimmy. I really, really wish you were right. And prior to January of 2020, I would have agreed with you 100 out of 100 times. But this is not what we're facing today. And getting opened up a little bit, is fine. It's a step, that we'll see what happens. We'll find out what happens because, when I look at my small businesses and talk to all the other small businesses that I deal with, when you try to open up at 25% or 50% or even 100%, knowing that a big chunk of your customer base won't leave their house or are only willing to buy online, lots of times it's not even cost effective to open up. And so you've got that challenge to deal with. And so just merely opening up doesn't address how commerce has changed. I mean, in reality, Jimmy, Amazon sales, online sales are booming. The economy is open. What's not open or what's open for discussion is how, where, why, and when we buy. Because if people had jobs, if people had sources of income, you pretty much could buy anything you want online. Maybe you can't go out to dinner, but you can certainly have that same dinner delivered to your house if you could afford it, right? What can't you buy online now? So it's not that the economy's not open. It's just that what's changing because of the virus is how we do business. Then the next question becomes, is there a better way? Because we're kind of evolving. We started off as an agrarian economy in this country. Then we went manufacturing industrial. Then we went hybrid digital physical. Now we're seeing an acceleration to a pure digital environment. And that's not necessarily bad. And that also might open the door for us to bring manufacturing of core products using AI and robotics back from overseas. And so, that entrepreneurial side of this country, and there's no greater entrepreneur, there's no country in the world that has more entrepreneurs or better entrepreneurs than we do. That entrepreneurial side actually gets juiced with this jobs program when we create consumer demand, because they invent new and better ways for us to compete both internally, domestically, and globally.
I think that innovation comes much more from an investment mechanism than from a consumer demand.
But you don't miss that. That investment's still going to be there. That's why the Fed, put all that money into the system. Look, Jimmy, I've got lots of money to invest, and I'm looking for investments. But let me just tell you point blank, as I look, I can't look and say, you know what, you did great in pre-pandemic commerce. I have to look and say, what's post-pandemic commerce going to look like? And are you going to be able to survive and thrive and return my investment? That's going to take time. I don't know, you don't know, nobody knows what post-pandemic commerce is actually going to look like.
Right.
And so going back again to a government program, we're going to have a balance. I don't think you're going to see private investment diminished at all. You're not going to see private creativity and entrepreneurship diminished, but we still need that balance.
We are focusing on this Free to Choose Friday edition of the program on socialism. And there's a brand new book that actually inspired me to choose this particular Friday as our Free to Choose Friday focused on socialism, entitled The United States of Socialism. It is by none other than author and documentarian Dinesh D'Souza, who I am so pleased to welcome here on Jimmy at the Crossroads today as we really focus in on socialism and what it could mean for America. Pleased to welcome Dinesh D'Souza. Sir, good to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and it's good to be on the program.
But I want to get a sense first for your feelings on the younger generation of Americans when it comes to socialism today.
I think for young people today, socialism seems attractive because they think that they can unhook it from the authoritarian socialism of the past. They think that you don't have to do it the way Lenin did it, or Mao, or Castro, that you can create a kind of benign democratic socialism modeled, they say, on Scandinavia, not Venezuela or Cuba, and one that takes into account not only class differences, but also racial grievances and gender grievances. So the term I use is identity socialism, a kind of marriage between socialism and identity politics. And because we're talking about this new hybrid, I don't think it's sufficient to refute it by simply saying it didn't work before, so it can't work now. Because as I say, the left says, yes, it can. Who says it doesn't work? It works in Sweden, it works in Norway. So my book is an attempt to come to grips with this new socialism, to articulate it, to criticize it, to show who's behind it, and finally to show why it's bad and how it can be stopped.
Yeah, Dinesh D'Souza, when you said a moment ago about democratic socialism and this idea that there's an alternative way to the totalitarian regimes of the past, I always think of democratic socialism this way, that in regular sort of traditional socialism, you have one lone wolf who decides to eat all the sheep. In democratic socialism, the wolves get together and vote to eat the sheep.
I think that's a very good way to put it. The way I put it is, if I go, when I was a kid, I'd go to school. This was in India, and I'd carry in my pocket a bunch of marbles. So there could be one guy who jumps me and takes my marbles, and he would be violating me, and he would be stealing my stuff. Now imagine that I was part of a group of 6, and 4 of them decided, hey, let's jump Dinesh and take his marbles. Now they're a majority, so in this sense they've got the majority vote. But by them jumping me and forcibly taking my marbles, they're doing exactly the same thing as the one guy, except now I'm you may say, being gang raped instead of being individually raped. So in either case, it's robbery. In either case, I'm being violated. And the fact that it's being done by a majority is really very little consolation and certainly no moral justification.
We're talking about authority figures using force, in this case to murder George Floyd, but also some of the excesses of police over the past week. We talked about it yesterday in the program, week or so, of some of the police out there in terms of using force. It's interesting that that would be what they're protesting when socialism is about force. In fact, there's this clip here at Cut 5. I want to play it for a moment. Milton Friedman talks about the moral value of using force to help versus voluntary exchanges, and I'd love to get your reaction to this. Let's play the clip.
Whenever you try to do good with somebody else's money, you are committed to using force. How can you do good with somebody else's money unless you first take it away from them?
So that's a little bit of Milton Friedman, who's our patron economist here on Free to Choose Fridays. What do you make of that in the context of what we're discussing here, Dinesh?
Well, it throws my mind back to the 1970s and 80s when I first came to America. And I got to say, it makes me a little wistful just watching Milton Friedman's kind of serene academic style. It so much reminds me of how I used to think of American politics as kind of an honorable debate between two sides that had, you may say, rival principles. And we put this debate before the American people, and they decide if they would like to endorse liberty or equality, equality of rights or equality of outcomes. It was a kinder, gentler America, you might say. So yes, I agree with what Milton Friedman is saying. I would put it far more forcefully and perhaps brutally today, because I think we are facing these brutal realities at a much different level than he ever did. I mean, we basically now have a Democratic Party that has become gangsterized under Obama and Hillary. They've got a deep state that literally entraps and it tries to figure out ways to get rid of its political opponents. It would jail them for life if they could. I experienced this personally. These people are thugs with badges. They're much more dangerous than thugs on the street. Then you've got Antifa marauding on the street, literally seizing property at will. And then you've got censorship that's become far more commonplace. The universities have become factories of ideological indoctrination. They were not that way when Milton Friedman gave that speech. When I was an undergraduate, I could have named 10 free market conservatives at Harvard off the top of my head, and these were outspoken. You'd be hard-pressed today to name one. So the problems have gotten far worse. Our side has got to get a lot tougher. One reason I've actually been very sympathetic toward Trump is because I realized that all of this division wasn't created by him. It created him. He's a response to it, and perhaps a necessary response to it, in the same way that the tough measures taken by Abraham Lincoln when he first came to office were a necessary response to the gangsterization of the Democratic Party in the 1850s.
Your point about Antifa and others in terms of property rights violations, I think, is essential in this conversation, because perhaps the most fundamental difference, I would say, between socialism and capitalism or a free market economy is the idea of property rights. And I want to play a clip here. This is Nicole Hannah-Jones. You've probably seen this in regards to the riots, where she was saying that you can't do violence if you're just destroying property. Let's take a listen to this, and I want to get your reaction, because I think it fits into exactly what you're discussing, Dinesh D'Souza.
One, we need to be really careful with our language. Yes, it is disturbing to see property being destroyed. It is disturbing to see people taking property from stores. But these are things. And violence is when an agent of the state kneels on a man's neck until all of the life is leached out of his body. Destroying property which can be replaced is not violence. And to put those things...
I just hearing that. And we played it a few different times on this program. My producer, Nathan, is kind of getting tired of hearing it. But hearing that, you cannot help but think that there are people across the country who do not care at all about property rights. And isn't that fundamental to this discussion, Dinesh D'Souza?
Well, I think we've got to be careful here, because on the face of it, what she's saying is in fact true. Namely, that our life is more valuable than our possessions. That's
Sure.
true.
Yes.
And I think that this is a case where the left, by the way, they always spin a narrative. Lawyers say that when you argue prosecution or defense, you should have a theory of the case. Well, the left has a theory of the case. Their theory of the case is that what happened to George Floyd, for example, happens every day in America. Their view is that this is how America is. America is chronically, structurally, institutionally. This is their theory. Now, the problem for our side is that we don't spin a theory. We say things like, facts don't care about your feelings, but we don't have a rival explanation of what America actually is. Now, I'd like to give that explanation with regard to property.
Please.
So, my property, and I'm thinking here of all the things I own, my book collection, everything, my clothes, my possessions, are as much a part of me. They are extensions of me in the same way that my memories, my ideas, my relationships with friends and acquaintances. In other words, my property is a part of me. So if you take away that by force, it is no different than putting your fingers around my neck and preventing me from speaking or gagging me or infringing on my person. Now, I agree, if you killed me, that would be worse. But short of that, you're harming me every which way, whether or not you forcibly cut my hair or tie me down or take away my stuff. It's all the same thing. There's no basic distinction between, quote, my possessions as if they are somehow external to me, but let's say my thoughts and feelings, which are somehow, quote, internal to me. They're the same thing.
Again, Dinesh D'Souza, our guest, author of the new book, The United States of Socialism, just came out this week, joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. It is such a pleasure and a privilege to introduce
Hey everybody, Jimmy Sengenberger here, host of the talk show Jimmy at the Crossroads, which I publish online in partnership with the Washington Examiner. You know, a lot of people ask me, what is the Crossroads? Why the Crossroads? Well, our show is cross-topical. It's at the intersection of politics and economics and other topics as well. We bring on a great intersection of A-lister guests, from Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban to podcaster Dave Rubin, EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler, Sidney Powell, who of course is Michael Flynn's lawyer, and also Dinesh D'Souza, noted documentarian and author. The show's cross-generational, reaching millennials and Gen Z, boomers and Gen X. We bring seriousness and also fun, with humor, comical videos, and more. And of course, we stand at the crossroads, sometimes playing the blues. Jimmy at the Crossroads is a different kind of talk show. It's not an attack program meant to own the libs. There are plenty of those, and they do give young conservatives the confidence to know that they're not alone and that what they believe is right. But it's not just about destroying the left and winning the argument. It's about winning people over. That's why Jimmy at the Crossroads is about growing the conservative movement, finding solutions, and helping to bring our country back to basics: free markets, limited government, individual liberty, and personal responsibility. In a moment, I'll tell you all about my new Crossroads Club that I know you'll want to be a part of. But first, take a look at some of what we've done here at the Crossroads.
You're an entrepreneur.
I'll give you the alternative.
You're an entrepreneur. Sure. You've got to create 30 million jobs over 3 years.
Yeah.
Tell me what companies can do that.
So, first
tell me
of
what
all,
20 or 50 or 100 companies can do that.
I can't tell you a specific companies that can do that because I don't know. In fact,
or investors.
But
what I don't, the greatest investors of
right.
all time.
Well, but I don't presume to think that I know who's going to be the best investor, the best company to do that. Just as I don't think the government is, that I could presume that the government's going to be effective to do that.
Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix, I said.
Has been on a determined campaign to convince the world that everything is hunky-dory. And when the government actually spends so much effort trying to convince you of something, you got to be very suspicious.
Your lawyers don't tell you even all the evidence that the government has given them, the few meager disclosures that were made literally at the 11th hour after you'd already been coerced into pleading guilty.
Hours of video evidence of Nancy Pelosi coming up on your porches and jujitsuing your precious packages, while Chuck Schumer waits in the street in the getaway van because he's too afraid to be a man and do his own dirty work.
Come on, Jimmy, what you got?
Is it scary that YouTube and Twitter and Facebook have this kind of power over us? Of course it is. But you know what? These things didn't always exist, and they won't always exist. David beat Goliath. The little guy can beat the big guy.
So we have to figure out ways to fight in which we are able to have that kind of reach. We can build our own megaphones And this is going to this is a little bit of a longer term project. It goes beyond Trump's re-election because it affects every election.
I'm good, man. It's a partnership. We're like this, Jimmy. I got you.
Jimmy, can I tell you that I've done about 200 shows in the last 3 weeks for this book tour? This has been by far my favorite interview.
And that, my friends, is how America was made great once again. Breaking at this hour, Jimmy Sengenberger is currently at the crossroads of politics and economics. Radio broadcaster master. Now the celeb on the web. He's the smarty of the party. He's in cahoots with the grassroots. Jimmy at the Crossroads brings you thought-provoking commentary, hard-hitting interviews, original satire, and the best bumper music known to man. Jimmy at the Crossroads.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of no sense.
Now that you've seen some of what we're doing, I want you to become a part of it. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about my new Crossroads Club, where individuals and businesses alike come together to support real conversation that moves the ball forward for the conservative movement. As part of the Crossroads Club, you'll be the bedrock of making this possible, something proactive, not just reactive. And depending on your membership level, you'll get some tremendous perks. Things like my official Jimmy at the Crossroads harmonica engraved with your name on it. Chocolate harmonicas, delicious. Exclusive discounts or free tickets to special edition webinars, online video courses, and believe it or not, public events. They're coming back, folks. Trust me. Believe me. Plus, you may get a unique opportunity to share your own personal video message with my audience. Also, the business memberships offer great opportunities to promote your business. For example, the business leaders level will get a complimentary live read commercial that I will personally present on the show once a month. But even more fundamentally, you'll be a part of a community of patriots united to save America. Don't miss out on this unique and exciting opportunity. My friends, I don't need to tell you that America is at a crossroads right now. If you believe in advancing liberty, if you believe that the Constitution makes our nation exceptional, and if you believe in me and what I'm striving to do here, I ask you to join me. Join us at the Crossroads. Log on to members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com and become a Crossroads Club member today. Thanks for your support.
Sometimes when you're feeling good on a Friday, you just want to whip out one of your harmonicas and play a little bit. Such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you today, as always. Thanks for joining us, being a part of the program. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, be sure to do so. But I wanted to play a little bit of harmonica to introduce our very special guest today, who, according to Twitter, is in quarantine or something in the Dagobah system. Dave Rubin is host of the Rubin Report and also of the new book, Don't Burn This Book, which we're going to put on the screen. Don't burn that book. Buy it instead. Dave Rubin, happy Free to Choose Friday on a day focused on free speech. Welcome to the show. So great to have you.
Jimmy, it's good to be with you. I wish I had a harmonica. I think I've got one around here somewhere, like buried deep, but you've got some skills, man. I'm impressed.
Well, thank you. I got 6 others right here. I've heard you, Dave Rubin, talk about big tech before, and here's the rub for me. And it is a difficult situation in a lot of ways because we do see censorship of a variety of different, more conservative speakers or viewpoints, different narratives than what the media is trying to spin, WHO politicians in regards to coronavirus, as you've pointed out. But at the same time, Facebook and Twitter, we may need them for the roles we play in media, but you don't need to be a part of that. And technically speaking, Facebook can't force you in any way to use its products or services, whereas the government has the power of force. So there's this big question about how we regulate or don't regulate big tech. And I'm of the mind that government shouldn't get involved because I think that would cause even more problems. And what needs to happen is we need to speak up more and more pronounced and get people lined up together against Facebook and Twitter when they do, or YouTube when they do these sorts of censorship things, as opposed to, as some are suggesting, looking towards regulating big tech more. What do you think of that?
You're speaking my language, man. Yeah, this is where I come on the more libertarian side of the argument. I don't believe that you take one big thing, big tech, and then you combine it with this other thing, big government, and then think that that will make things smaller. What that will do is combine them into some sort of giant Voltron or Transformer Devastator-like monster. Did you get the reference there?
I did indeed.
You did. I thought you would. You look like you're at the right age to get the reference. So I don't believe in that. I believe in human ingenuity. I believe in competition. I believe in individuals standing up. So yes, is it scary that YouTube and Twitter and Facebook have this kind of power over us? Of course it is. But you know what? These things didn't always exist, and they won't always exist. David beat Goliath. The little guy can beat the big guy. As you may have heard, I started a tech company, locals.com, and we're building digital homes for creators where you own all of your stuff. We don't own user data. You set your rules. And I think we're solving about 95% of problems for 95% of the creators. And just yesterday, Donald Trump Jr., you may have heard of that guy, he announced that he's going to be using our platform. So I think things can change. And the knee-jerk response to just say, hey, we got a problem, let government fix it. It's like, well, you know, government causes most of the problems. So most likely they're not going to solve most of the problem.
Many times already on this program, I have played Ronald Reagan's statement that government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem, because it's so true. But you look at big tech. I mean, I remember when Mark Zuckerberg, just a couple of years ago now, I mean, I guess it was a couple of years ago, although it seems more recent than that, he testified before the United States Congress, and he was asked a question about whether or not he would support regulation of big tech. And he said, if it's the right regulation, and then Senator Lindsey Graham asked him, would you help us write regulations? And he said, sure, I'll help you. Big tech wants more regulation because they know they can have a seat at the table in order to push out little guys, and like locals.com, in order to increase their power relative to the market.
Well, not only do they want it because it will help crush competition, right? Because then the government will be off their back. But they also want it because then the government, then there's this strange line where it's like, instead of the government censoring you, well, it'll be the company censoring you, but the government will have something to do with the company. I mean, all of these people, you know, when AOC and the rest of the progressives, they demand that Facebook, you know, censor hate speech and censor all these things, it's like, wait a minute. You know, hate speech, we're allowed to say hate speech. The Supreme Court ruled on that. There's no such thing as hate speech. You can't call for direct violence for people, but you're allowed to say bad things. That is part of what free speech is. Actually, it's a necessary part, because how do you decide what is right and what is okay and what is acceptable and what isn't? So once the government, once AOC says, no, Facebook, you have to do this, well, congratulations. That is a major infringement on our First Amendment rights. And I think a lot of people are waking up to this stuff. I mean, I think one of the side effects, the positive side effects, let's say, of coronavirus is that people are waking up. They're going, wait a minute. Why does the government have so much to do with my life? Name three. If you say to anybody, you could say to the furthest lefty socialist Bernie Bananas loon on Twitter, if you say to them, name three politicians you like, they can't do it. They'll say Bernie, AOC, and then, you know, maybe picks another. But the point is, nobody can pick three they like. Even the people who love Trump the most, they don't love him because he's a politician. They love him because he's not a politician. So the idea that these people that we've just decided to give power to have any clue what's going on. I mean, that Gavin Newsom, my governor here in California, who was the former mayor of San Francisco, who turned it into literally a crap hole. There's an app to tell you where human poop is on the street in San Francisco. I'm pretty sure that this is not the guy that should be ruling my life in California right now, which maybe says more about me, why I'm here. I'm not sure, but you know, we used to be able to go to the beaches, so that was nice.
Well, I'll tell you, Colorado is becoming increasingly Californicated, and that's where I'm broadcasting from. So I mean, yeah, it would be nice. Maybe you can help us ward off some of the left-wing stuff that's been coming from California by moving here. You'd be the right kind of Californian to move to Colorado, but you might not want to come here, to be honest with you, because more parts of the country...
I got my own problems over here, man.
I know, full well. I watch your show. You have a tremendous amount of problems, Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin hosts the Rubin Report. Let's talk about what's going on with coronavirus for just one moment, especially on the free speech side. But look, I know that you are a Revenge of the Sith fan, Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. And this has been in my mind because I think this is the nature, this is the way that government is right now. It reminds me of a particular scene in Revenge of the Sith.
The Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society.
For a safe and secure society, that sounds like what the argument is behind suppressing some of the speech on countervailing narratives in this coronavirus crisis and the science. That sounds like so many things that are happening in our society today, Dave Rubin.
Jimmy, can I tell you that I've done about 200 shows in the last 3 weeks for this book tour? This has been by far my favorite interview. The fact that you just played a clip from Revenge of the Sith, I have to insert Star Wars references.
The force is
normally.
strong with me, Dave. The force is strong with me.
Indeed it is. Well, look, I've been saying to people for years that the prequels will be looked back on much more fondly. Yes, the acting is stiff. Hayden Christensen's a terrible actor, and some of the dialogue and the love scenes are stiff. But the general idea of a person creating conflict to consistently build power, which is exactly what first Senator Palpatine did, and then Chancellor Palpatine, and then ultimately Supreme Leader Palpatine. That's exactly what he did. And what was he doing the entire time? The more, that scene right there, that's it. And then everyone will cheer you along as you're telling them that you're going to keep them safe from the thing that you created. So I'm not saying that our government created the coronavirus, but they create a response that is so over the top that suddenly every time they do something, we applaud them for it. So you got people in California where virtually nobody is sick, and certainly young people are healthy, and it's 85 and sunny every day, and they're telling us we can't go to the beach, and we're all like, oh, good, we can't go to the beach anymore. Well, why am I paying 13% property taxes? So the point is, we need Jedi. We need more Jedi. They're scattered across the galaxy. Another reference that I'm sure you've heard me make is that what the progressives did to the liberals was basically execute Order 66. Mm-hmm. The progressives moved into the liberals. The liberals didn't realize it because liberals are nice and liberals are tolerant and decent. And they just executed all of them. And I would say there's a couple good liberals spread throughout the galaxy, which is why I say I'm on Dagobah. And I would say Bill Maher's there. And Bill Maher's an interesting character because who hates Bill Maher now? It's the left. Who loves Bill Maher now? It's the right. I mean, everything is completely upside down right now. And, I am a believer that the little guy can beat the big guy. So if Luke blew up the Death Star and all of these things can happen, then we can fix this problem, but it ain't going to be easy.
In Raleigh, North Carolina, not Minneapolis, Minnesota, as horrific as it is that has been the central location originally for these riots, but elsewhere in the country too, including Raleigh, North Carolina, chaos has ensued with mass destruction. See what's happening to some businesses there over the weekend.
Peaceful protests turned violent as looters smashed through windows and doors of downtown Raleigh stores. Dozens of people broke into businesses, stealing clothing, merchandise, and even setting fires on Salisbury Street. Some shop owners stayed and pleaded with looters to stop. Moments later, Raleigh police officers threw tear gas to break up large groups of people, destroying buildings. But other protesters maintained peace to get their point across, holding signs.
So that's a little bit from the streets of Raleigh, North Carolina over the weekend. One of the businesses you saw busted apart there is owned by Rick French, who is one of the owners of French West Vaughn, a PR firm. Also is co-owner of the Daytona Tortugas baseball team and a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a film producer, and so much more. But Rick French joins us now for a perspective that I thought we all needed to hear. Rick, my friend, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you today. Despite the circumstances, I'm grateful for you sharing your story about what has happened to your business, and I'm so sorry. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it, buddy. So you'll see behind me, I'm sitting in our lobby, the boarded up windows that you saw smashed in that video clip. I'm on the inside today. There's a little much noise outside with a lot of sawing and people boarding up their windows. You know, we had 2 nights of extraordinary violence and looting and rioting, and we suffered, as you can see in that clip, pretty serious damage Saturday night, and then again last night there was additional damage. So it's been a long 48 hours of I think the worst of humanity, but also the best of humanity. The number of volunteers that have come out to help board up windows and offer drinks and words of encouragement and delivering food to those of us in downtown Raleigh who were affected by this. It was hard to go through, but it's also nice to see the community rallying around itself to say that this kind of behavior is not okay.
Well, Rick French, I was monitoring your social media, your Facebook page over the weekend on Saturday, just deeply distraught watching, and then it happened again on Sunday. And as I recall, Saturday, you didn't see any evidence of police showing up to try to deal with the chaos. In fact, you hired private security, as I recall, to help address the situation and try to bring some safety to your own establishment. But tell us a little bit about the police presence or lack thereof.
Yeah, there was none. You know, this is hard because, you know, I've been a member of the downtown community for 23 years and have invested a lot of time and energy and money in renovating a historic building to become our headquarters. And I think that the police orders were to stand down and not engage the rioters, and so therefore they were allowed to go unchecked with sledgehammers and bats, and that literally every single glass window in downtown Raleigh, bar none, is broken. They went through what they didn't do Saturday night, they went through last night and broke. They set fires in the streets. They tried to burn buildings down. The rioters went unchecked because police were instructed not to engage it and inflame the situation worse. So the business community was left to hang, and that's what happened. And you know, and the mayor is sorry, here another call. The mayor is a friend of mine. I love her and respect her, but she did not act quickly enough to put a curfew in place like some other cities did, and therefore protests were allowed to form, and as night fell, it just turned to unchecked violence. And I did, my nephew is a former Raleigh police officer and SWAT team member who's now in another city. So he came with his firearms, flak jackets, and so on, and we protected the building against looters coming in all night on Saturday night until we could get it boarded up on Sunday morning. And it was difficult. It was scary. We were not sure if we were going to make it through the night the way that people were trying to come through the windows after breaking through them. We did. Fortunately, we were safe. I woke up Sunday morning after 2 hours of sleep and found pieces of glass that were from the shattered windows embedded in my forehead and my scalp and in a couple pieces in my arms.
Oh, dear.
Not even realizing through the adrenaline of the night that had happened. I knew it had been cut, but I didn't know, that I had it up in the forehead. So Sunday morning, I was cleaning that up before boarding the windows. So said it's been rough, but it's been rough in cities around the country. But as you said earlier, these are not protests. This is an excuse to riot. I support the Black Lives Matter. I support everything about that messaging, all lives matter. But what has happened in these communities after dark is not about protests, peaceful protests and having their voices heard. This is solely about an excuse to commit crime. And that's what we've seen here, and it's sad.
Well, we've got some images that we're going through here. We could put up a few more from your Facebook page. Hope you don't mind. I wanted to show some of what was going on. This is Rick French, our guest, is establishment, French West Vaughan. Is it that, or was it another business?
It was French West Vaughan. You know, I run
your
pre-productions in a lot of companies that I own out of our headquarters here. We have a headquarters building that takes up most of a city block, and what you're seeing in those photos is old storefronts, but then behind that is just an entrance area. It's multiple stories of buildings that houses our employees, so it's a little deceiving. It looks like a storefront kind of from the beginning. That's the look we wanted.
Yeah.
But it's there's a lot of about 18,000 square feet behind that of offices and so on that have been, you know, we're one of the oldest standing buildings in Raleigh on the city's historically black street. And we have parts of our building that were renovated to honor that heritage and that history. And none of that really mattered on Saturday or Sunday night. So it's I don't know what message you get across in burning down your community, in damaging your community, and in doing economic harm to the people who are trying to provide for a better quality of life for all people in our city.
Well put.
And I feel for so many of our businesses that, you know, my business, a lot of our employees have been working from home because of COVID, but so many of our businesses have been closed due to COVID, especially the restaurants and bars that were just reopening. And literally there is not a single, and I mean this sincerely, there is not a single restaurant or bar in downtown Raleigh that was not completely vandalized and looted of all of its inventory. There's not a single store, retail store in downtown Raleigh that was not broken out and all of its inventory gone. These businesses that have suffered such harm economically over the last few months will not be able to reopen anytime soon. And
it's just so sad.
It's a war zone. And I don't use that term lightly, but to see it and see what has transpired. And you know, we haven't had this is one of America's biggest growth cities over the last 2 decades. We've not had instances of protests and violence in this way. We've not had situations like what happened in Minneapolis. And there have been questions about police tactics as it related to a shooting of a man several years ago. The police produced evidence to show that he had a knife and was wielding the knife toward him. So I don't, you know, look, I think we can't undo hundreds of years of social injustice here. All of us support the fact that the Black community needs a better voice and that they need to be heard in their concerns. And we as a business support that, but we don't support vigilantism and taking it out on companies and individuals that don't have anything to do, in my opinion, with that suppression of their rights. Quite the contrary.
And ladies and gentlemen, let's get you back to the conservative talk show host from Aurora, Colorado, Jimmy Sengenberger.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back live. Hope you enjoyed that special best of collection from Jimmy at the Crossroads. I can't believe we're almost to 70 episodes already. What fun conversations with Mark Cuban, Dinesh D'Souza, Dave Rubin, and Well, Rick French wasn't particularly fun. It was a tough and somber interview. But I do have a positive update on that. He feels a little more confident, shall we say, about the mayor of Raleigh and her response afterwards, that she ended up listening better to their concerns, although I think it was, personally, I think it was too little, too late. But at least she was listening to their concerns when they were expressed. So that was a best of Jimmy at the Crossroads. You can see we've done quite a bit. We've got quite a ways to go. We're just getting started, bringing you engaging, intelligent talk, Sang style, right here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. And I want you to be a part of it. Please log on to members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com. That's members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com, or at jimmyatthecrossroads.com, go up to the top of the menu and click on Crossroads Club and join the journey. Join me, join us at the Crossroads. You get special perks, exciting opportunities, mugs, the engraved harmonica, chocolate harmonicas, a wine tumbler, Scruffy Man special discounts. I mean, you got so many things that are incredible as a part of this, and I want you to join in. Log on, members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com. We've got fun and exciting webinars, online courses, eventually public events, lots of things we're cooking up here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. You get exclusive discounts, sometimes even free, and there are business memberships too if you own a business. So log on, check it out. Want you to be a part of it and along for the ride. And also, if you have not done so already, please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads. Jimmy at the Crossroads on YouTube. Like yours truly on Facebook, Jimmy Sengenberger Media Personality, facebook.com/Jimmy Sengenberger Pro. Follow me on Twitter at Sang Center, Sang with an E, not an A, Center on Twitter, and the Washington Examiner. Do follow our friends there on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and of course at WashingtonExaminer.com, where they have fantastic reporting and commentary. Well, that is it for us today. Tomorrow we should be joined by Fahad Nazer, spokesperson for the Saudi Arabian Embassy in Washington, D.C., joining us for a special and exclusive on-camera interview here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Do not miss that. And so much more coming up as the week progresses. In the meantime, stay well, stay healthy, and stay safe. My thanks again, Mark Cuban, Dinesh D'Souza, Dave Rubin, and Rick French, our special guests from the highlights today. Nathan Matoush, working the Matoush Magic as producer extraordinaire. And to you for watching, listening, sharing, subscribing, joining Jimmy's Crossroads Club, and whatever else you're doing. Thank you. Love you, and God bless America.